All right, very good. Well, welcome everybody to Business Bytes. We're gonna have an interesting conversation today with a gentleman who has been. I've known Blake. We've known each other for a few years, anyways. Uh, right? I think a couple, 3 years, maybe
Oh yeah.
longer. Yeah. Blake is the CEO of a business located in Florida called HGI. I'll let you talk a little bit more about the business, but it's an interesting. Blake has an interesting story to tell, and we can expose that a little bit in our conversation. In genre is the wrong word, but the business space that Blake is in has undergone some changes, and that space is print and copy. Um, and we'll expose a little bit more about that. But Blake, why don't you give a little bit about to start off with who you are and a little bit about the business itself, because just that is interesting, the interesting story, family business, and tell us a little bit about that, and then we can dive into some questions. But let's first get kind of the Blake slash HGI story, if you will.
Okay, since I'm the focus, I guess I'll put cameras on. Don't mind my bright yellow shirt. Um, so yeah, I guess what's most interesting about us is we are a family company. I'm fourth generation to be president of the company, and we were founded in 1921 in West Palm Beach. And in certain parts of the country, there was a lot going on in 1921, but South Florida was not one of those places. It was founded amongst a land boom as a stationery company. Um, the the original owners, Mr. Halsey and Mr. Griffith, one owned a hotel, and the other was, I think he was in real estate during a land boom, and they saw that people were going to need like stationery and pens and pencils and things like that. So they sort of opened a little small stationery store. Um, and that there's a land crash, and then the stock market crash, and then World War II, and all sorts of different things. But all throughout, the company sort of persisted and survived. My great grandfather bought it um, in the midst of World War II for Mr. Halsey and Mr. Griffith, who just wanted to retire. Um, and they grew it to a pretty large entity. My grandfather was the president of NOPA, which is the National Office Products Association. So amongst all the little independent office supply companies and like in the country, we held a fairly large space, even down here in South Florida. And then my father took over in the mid to late 80s, and there was a little company out of Boca Raton, Florida, that had this idea that companies would that the off supply retailers were making way too much margin, and that companies would send employees across town to a warehouse to get discounts on pens and pencils. And in their prospectus, when they were trying to get funding for starting this company, they had little old Halsey and Griffith as the number one sort of example of an organization that is too fat and happy and ripe for disruption. So that company became Office Depot. Um, and my father, right after taking over the company, found themselves in a bit of a challenge. Companies that are that tell me if you've heard this story before. Um, an organization who is doing really well doesn't want to rock the boat and change anything because they're making huge margins, and they don't believe that the fun will ever end, but it did. We actually went Chapter 11 in the late 80s while I was in college. And then my father sort of pivoted the company and found a Japanese copier manufacturer back before copiers were connected to the network. And we changed tactics and went that direction and grew the company back to whatever, as big as it ever was before. and we're chugging along. And now I've sort of been handed well, the way I tell the story, we had a 100th anniversary party, and my family gave me the reins, handed me the keys. But we had the 20th anniversary party in 2021, and that was when basically all the organizations, in our area and everywhere, had decided to work from home. And they didn't need giant printers and copiers at home. Nobody was in the offices anymore. So we had another sort of threat to our existence, our probably 10th one in our history. And that's when they handed the keys to me and said, "You figure this out." And it seems to be a tradition in my family that when a crisis happens in the organization, somebody just hands off the responsibility to the next generation. So that's where I'm at. I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
Oh
But
no, that's great.
100 years and 5 minutes, that's not so bad.
So you guys, your company actually did hand-to-hand combat with Office Depot?
I wouldn't call it hand-to-hand combat. We got run over like a steamroller is basically with Office Depot. But Office Depot um was founded based on the concept that our we were an example of the sort of business that was ripe for disruption.
Oh, yeah,
And
interesting.
my family never believed that, like, we would we would go to people's offices and go into their supply cabinet, count up all their supplies and write an order for them, then fulfill the order and deliver it. And when Office Depot started, it was like the beginnings of Costco. I don't know if you guys remember those sorts of things, but there was no frills. The
Mhm.
warehouse floors basically were concrete, and you had to send somebody over there to buy your stuff. So you were just paying the labor for somebody to go over and buy it that we were paying in margin. And we were probably making more margin than that. But anyway, nobody believed it. And then it happened. Lots of advertising and low prices, and people will, drive across town to save, 20% on a pencil. And they were right and we were wrong. So we had to find something else to do with our time. So we found a little company that is this fledgling little dealership that we bought, that sold and serviced this Japanese manufacturer that nobody can say their name. They're Rico, and
A
it
little
was really,
company called Rico.
yeah. We were challenged to actually be in Miami and try to convince people that Rico was the thing, because I back then there was only one name that people knew in that business, and it was Xerox. So we helped the Japanese disrupt Xerox, much like Office Depot helped disrupted us. So
Super interesting. And maybe talk a little bit about um, you know, your your industry and being print. Talk a little bit about print and you know
um,
and some of the recent changes that I mean, because it's interesting when you tell the story, and this is kind of the first time I knew pieces of it, but I didn't know the whole story. One of the things that's interesting to me is the way your business has been able to successfully pivot, right? You identify things and then you pivot. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying that you've been successful in doing pivots. So maybe talk a little bit about that, and maybe like I think there's been a recent pivot in kind of the print space, and maybe talk a little bit about that and what HDI is
well,
doing with that.
I'll give you an example. This is a little different from we had I don't know. Assume everybody who's been in the career long enough to remember the 2006 financial crisis, to that sort of era. And in Florida, um, for lack of a better word, is its major industry is real estate scams.
Very nice.
So when real estate prices crater, we have business changes drastically. Like our industry then, about 20% of the businesses as clients of ours just sort of like evaporated. And then we sort of the small companies, and we were able to replace them. But we also saw that all the mortgage companies that were doing high volumes of print just migrated over to the um, whatever the reverse of a mortgage when you get repossessed.
Mhm,
I can't think of the word right now. But
mhm.
the and
Foreclosure.
the attorneys started doing the foreclosures. Thank you, the foreclosure business. So we just saw the volume move. This time's been a little different, because people aren't in the offices very much. The I was at a conference about 2 weeks ago, and they had paid for some data from companies who do swipe badges for going in and out of office buildings, and they were able to aggregate, anonymize their data, and try to come to some conclusions about like how often people are in the office. And they concluded that we have peaked at about 60% office occupancy as compared to 2019. And the funny part about that is if they do it by day of the week, about 40% of office capacity is Monday. It peaks around 6% on Wednesday. And on Friday, about 20% of the people are in the office. If they're not in the office, they're generally not using our equipment, right? And what we've experienced is about 20% of our volume has just gone by the wayside, meaning people who just are printing like in aggregate. We probably do 15 million pages a month, and about 20% of that, we were doing about 20% more before the pandemic. So it's sort of been challenging, and we were already, when this happened, we were already working um, with our partners NetVPro about sort of pivoting our good relationships with our clients to be able to provide IT services. It was something we were slow to move on for a long time, not because of the risk, but you just get in the business owner's dilemma of, hey, I'm making margin. Why would invest that margin someplace else to hedge against a problem that may never come, right? But the lesson is problems always come, and you just always have to continue to evolve. So that's been one of our big moves over the last like couple of years, because we basically made a reputation over a very long time as being people who will bend over backwards to take care of their clients. And we've seen for a long time in the IT services space, there are a lot of clients that are not getting the sort of support that they should get. We just see they lean on us too much because we've always dabbled in IT support because we're a VAR for some software vendors, and we have accessories that have to be connected to the network, and we sort of support IT in that way, and we can see that there are some better IT organizations and a lot of worse ones. Um, and so we thought there was a lot of opportunity there within our base to actually um, talk to the people who already trust us. And it's a slow go as you're pivoting from anything and getting people to think of you differently. That takes a lot of effort, but I think we're starting to make some progress.
Yeah, that the story of pivoting is interesting. Local here in Minnesota, there is a large construction organization. They did road construction, those types of things, and and they were having some challenges with the branding and those issues that come with a saturated marketplace. They pivoted to become put energy. They put the word energy behind their name, and they they started building uh like windmill pads basically. Now, to be clear, they're not an energy company. They're a windmill, or they're a construction company. Actually, they're one of the top 10 construction companies by size in the United States. But by putting that little tag energy on it and pivoting to building, those big pads, they really saved themselves, honestly. That the ability to pivot is, uh, seems critical, in an
Yeah,
organization's success.
if you're lucky, you can do something. Well, if you're lucky, you have to give them a little more credit than that. If you're smart, like they are, you can pivot your marketing, like the way you're
Mhm.
perceived without actually pivoting what you're doing or the expertise or the people you have. Um, you know, with us, we've had to sort of either buy organizations or, you know, learn how to run an entirely different business over a few
Right,
times. And
right,
that can be really challenging. And what we have as an asset is we have 2,500 clients in our local region that know us and trust us, right?
right,
And
right.
that's what we have to like draw upon. That's why we can continue to be successful. It's basically because those people like will take our calls and will give us a chance to talk to them.
So, Blake, in your role as CEO and the leader of the organization, um, like what things keep you awake at night? What I mean, you don't have to tell me about all the
Well,
demons that
well,
you
it's
got
okay.
bouncing around there, but like what from a
Uh,
business perspective, what kind of
Well,
th
I just saw my insurance renewal for healthcare. You want to talk about that? I mean,
yeah,
that just goes up.
yeah.
Everything goes up, and seems that your costs keep going up. And I'd say there's a couple of things in the copier industry. What I think I'm struggling with is this competing forces. Because we just do managed print, for that's most of where the revenue comes out of that. In that business, um, the competing forces are the how long will work from home stay? I think it's here to stay, at least temporarily, but I think people will end up back in the office just because there's some power to being together. Um, but people have also learned how to do things um, without paper. I mean, 3 years ago, you rarely saw a contract that people didn't expect you to print and sign, even though DocuSign, all that stuff existed. It just wasn't like you mostly got people expecting you to print and scan it. Now you hardly ever get that, right? It's
Mhm.
almost always digital contracts. Um, just as an example. And the other competing force is with the explosion of Amazon and online ordering, a lot of the paper plants have pivoted to making cardboard because it's more profitable. Sort of like Ford pivoting to make only SUVs because
Mhm.
making 20% of a $50,000 transaction is better than making 20% of a $20,000 transaction, right? So cardboard's more expensive than paper. So the paper mills make more money making cardboard for Amazon for all your online purchases than they do making cut sheet paper, which has dropped you know, the availability, inventory, supply of cut sheet papers, raised the price of it. Cut sheet paper now is 2.5 times more expensive than it was 5 years ago. It's about a penny and a half a sheet. So you have these competing forces of as paper gets more expensive, you have a disincentive to print. And as people are finding other ways to print, they're sort of accelerating that disincentive. So we sort of feel like that industry is going to drop, 2 or 3% a year for the next 15 years. And
Mhm.
if I want to keep the company going, I got to find some other way to make money or buy out my competitors who are struggling and just sort of, aggregate more business. The other thing that really keeps me up at night is we are a place for dozens and dozens of blue collar guys who fix things to work. And, the market will only support so much salary for those people. And I live in an area in Southeast Florida where the cost of living has absolutely skyrocketed. A young person in most of the country just getting out of school or getting out of trade school um, has less of a chance to buy a home than their parents did now. Down here, it's it's nearly impossible, right?
Mhm.
You need a multi-person household to buy a home down here on what we can pay in salary. That keeps me up because I don't know where I'm going to get the good people from um,
Right.
to come into this industry down the road.
Right.
Um, and I don't have a good answer for that, other than things normalize or, I think the market ends up paying more for the same services eventually because they just have to. There's just no other
Yeah.
way to have people employed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting. I recently had an opportunity to be on a large boat in Alaska, and one of our stops was Vancouver Island. Well, actually, um, uh, oh, I can't. It's one of the islands that's close to Vancouver. But anyway, the conversation turned with a tour person around the cost of living and housing and things like that, and that was very interesting. And you bring up a great point about how do you pay people? Like how do you pay people when a normal house is $700,000? It's like
yeah, I was actually,
and a gallon of milk is $10.
yeah,
It's
I,
kind of interesting.
I was in Vancouver in September and I was actually impressed that compared to down here, they had whatever the multi-family housing, right? the entire downtown island, there is not a single family home on it, right? Nobody owns the waterfront. Down here in Palm Beach, all the waterfront is privately owned, right?
Hmm.
By like, and there's very few like population density areas. And Vancouver set aside, like changed those laws a long time ago so that they could actually accommodate more people and live in like closer proximity. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I actually have a relative who's a professor there, and what I can't remember the university. It's in Vancouver, and kind of a similar thing. He moved from Wisconsin, where it was all kind of you have your piece of land and your little wood hut, and you live there and burn wood and stuff. But yeah, in Vancouver, there's more. I don't know if I'd call it high density housing, but yeah, uh, interesting stuff. I guess with those things said, and you being a CEO and in the role that you have, like what types of things do you're a vendor for organizations, right? So you provide services to all of your customers, and you are a vendor for organizations. What types of things do you look for from a vendor? Because I mean, you're a large business, you have vendors who service you. What types of things are important for you, to have from a vendor who services your business? What do you look for from a vendor partner?
I was having this conversation today with one of my reps, just as we have a bunch of leasing partners, right? So they basically finance equipment purchases for our customers. And there's one in particular, a company out of Iowa called, all the banks are out of Iowa, but for whatever reason, but one called Great America that is an independent company
Mhm.
that is just a remarkable customer service organization. You call them, anybody you talk to is is valuable. If they don't know the answer, they'll tell you they don't know it, and they'll go find it. They'll pick up the phone. You don't go to voicemail. They're just a really top-notch customer service organization, and I would prefer to do business with them because there's always challenges, right? Like, and who's going to work with you to overcome the challenge, right? Like, if nothing went wrong, they wouldn't need our help, right? If they could just buy a piece of equipment, or if the Sophos firewall set itself up and nothing could ever go wrong, Windows patches were
Mhm.
completely flawless every Tuesday, right? Then they don't need us. That's
Mhm.
not the world we live in. The world we live in is something is going to go wrong. Who do you have a relationship with, and who do you trust to pick up the phone and help you in a pinch, right? To have the confidence that, like, if Russell's not available, there's somebody else that can help me, right?
Mhm.
In this organization. Um, that's generally what I look at. I want to have, and I also want to have a personal relationship. I do not like the idea of feeling like I'm calling, down here it's Comcast,
Mhm.
or AT&T. I don't want
Yeah,
to I don't want
yeah.
to feel like, if I call and I have to spend 10 minutes conversing with a robot in order to like get somebody on the phone, I'm not feeling a lot of value.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. And I don't, I suppose the few folks on this call don't know my history. My background is in call centers. I was responsible for all of the call center technology for finger hut companies. I don't know if people remember that, but we were second to J.C. Penney in catalog sales. So Finger Hut was a good size organization. And the great thrust in the 1990s was a way they wanted to find, and by they I mean the catalog space or the order space, wanted desperately to find a way to automate orders, a way to fully automate a customer order. And IVR was the interactive voice response was the buzzword of the day. And the more you could do in an automated fashion, the better. And it's very interesting looking back on it, just how wrong we were with that, just how much people literally hate to interact in that way with machines. And it's interesting for me to hear you articulate kind of that experience in that way. And brings me back to, like I said, the roaring 90s, the decadent 90s when orders were automated and we were using IVRs. But yeah, people just don't like that. And so an important thing to you is that that service element. I call it the lost art of customer service. And then, that's why in today's world, when I go to a gas station, I put $100 or $120 worth of fuel in my truck. I make them give me a bag from my pop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So that's the least they can do for $100 of fuel is give me a bag for my pop.
Uh, Well, look, this is probably not like if you're looking to scale a business and sell it, this is probably not. In fact, I'm probably not the person to talk to. It's never been the strategy for us. It's always
Right.
been how do we make sustainable relationships. I I think the more the sort of business society goes toward this build it and sell it model, the more room they're making, the more frustration they're making in the marketplace, and the more room they're making for people like us to say, yeah, it costs a few dollars more, but you get a different experience, right? You're not going to have what you had there, right? Like,
It, it's
Russell's going to know
interesting,
your kids' names, right?
right? Well, it's
That's
interesting to
how that
me
works.
how many of the customers that I have in my professional life who, um, like we meet on a regular basis and we just have a cup of coffee. We just relate on a human level, and that's part of that service experience is like you said, getting to know them, knowing who, what their kids do, and that human experience of interacting. So I think that it's interesting to me to see the space that we're building and the automation that we're building, those types of things, and that the human piece is still almost craved. After COVID and everybody being separated, from their coworkers and working from home, the craving to just kind of have that human interaction and how important that is to people.
I, I mean, I don't know if anybody else in the call saw it, but I felt it, when you came out of that and you finally went and sat in front of a customer again, like you could have talked to them every day on Zoom and you're not getting the entire story. You're not getting
Right,
all the other sort of information as to what's going on with them, not understanding them as well as you would if you could see them. And look, this stuff, like I said, it doesn't scale,
right.
um, but it does create a lot of stickiness, and that has a lot of value.
So Blake, when you think about it, in the business, the vertical that you're in, and the type of business that you're in, like what role or what role does technology play, or what technologies or new technologies are you looking at in your business? What kind of what's the next step? Is AI part of it? What's kind of the next thing? Not for what you're offering your customers, but the technology that you use in your business to do the things that you need to do.
Um, well, I'm always concerned about being easy to do business with, so I think right now we're our payments portal area needs an upgrade. We need to make it easier for people to pay us. We need to just like give them the option of having auto pay and just have a little more control over that. We've been having in Florida, I don't know if it's nationwide, but we have a lot of mail fraud, people intercepting checks and, washing them
Mm,
and cashing them for more money
mm,
someplace else. So it's getting dangerous to send checks through the mail. Neither rain nor sleet nor whatever,
mm,
but you cut their budgets and yeah, suddenly it doesn't work. How about that? Um, the uh, I use a little bit of Chat GPT for sort of marketing. I've decided that it's for me it's a really, really terrible student. And if I tell it to write an
mm,
article about something, at least I have something to start with because I know what I don't like and I can sort of start from there. So that's been helpful. Um, we try to eat what we cook here. We do a lot of like automate like data capture automation, integration, data integration. So doing things like on our accounts payable side, like invoice capture to pay with no data entry. Um, that that stuff we're doing internally because we have the expertise. We sell it to our clients, and we don't sell anything to our clients, and we don't use ourselves.
mm,
Um,
mm.
and so that's part of it. I don't have a lot of um, you know, the other stuff's just sort of industry specific. Like
Right.
doing a better job of measuring when somebody's out of toner and trying to figure out the most efficient way to ship it to them because UPS costs are going up. And a lot of it's managing costs. I don't have a lot of technology on the sales side of things, but I am looking into some options for e-commerce. Let people avoid talking to salespeople if they want to do business with us, that sort of thing.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and obviously I'm an old guy. There's a lot of white hair in my beard, and we were talking about the fact that we came up technology through the 90s, right? And there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, Cisco was coming into its own, and Amazon started, and there's all these things that exist today that people just kind of assume, that we're out there and just kind of assume. And we're talking about there hasn't been, like, even though there's been kind of these interesting technical advancements and things like that, but even like if you think of office technology and the things we use, phones, those things, there hasn't been a huge change since like voice over IP was kind of like the last big thing that happened, right? Because everything else, it's a different wrapper around the same technology, and that's kind of the things you're saying kind of ring back to that for me is that there's like better software around it, so the software pieces have become better, but the core pieces, voice over IP, telephony, compute, those things, they're still basically the same. They're just like faster and more. I
Yeah, I think that's insightful. I don't think there's any question about that. But then some of the um, we're sort of in a like a market here where there's been a lot of aggregation of power. And in the past, that aggregation of power like hid some innovations. If AT&T Bell South doesn't get broken up, do we have cell phones as soon, right? Because all that stuff was in Bell
Mhm.
Labs, and
Right,
they didn't want to have people stop paying, 4 cents a minute for long
right,
distance, right? So
right.
they didn't release the stuff they built. Xerox famously made the graphical user interface in the mouse, but they didn't have any use for it until Steve Jobs sort of wandered in and looked at their stuff and, ripped it off to make Apple, right?
Mhm.
And so, is where are these innovations hidden? I know there's a lot of money going into AI, and I'm sure AI is going to do marvelous and terrifying things to us.
Hey, if it makes Elon Musk nervous, it makes me nervous.
Yeah, uh, I think it should make us nervous, but
Yeah,
it's also the cat's out of the bag. So like, what do you
yeah,
do, right?
yeah. There's
It's
no
not like
putting it back.
you can't put it back. So
Right,
um,
right.
yeah.
Um. So what do you see as the biggest kind of external challenges to your business? Like what things do you see out there on the, either today or on the horizon as you look out, as a CEO, your gaze is spread out farther than, the line person who's worried about, how they're going to do this widget today. You're looking out over the horizon. What do you see out there as kind of the biggest, most significant external factor that threatens your business?
Um, so like we talked about a few of them, things that keep me up at
Mhm.
night. But other than that, really, we just need to spend time and effort finding new clients in a world where I try to be reflective of how I, you receive people trying to get my attention that don't currently have my attention. And I'm not terribly patient about it because I'm inundated with people trying to trick me into saying I missed a meeting in an email thread or like
Right,
all sorts of weird
right.
techniques. And so in this world where people are inundated with these requests for their attention, how do I get the attention of the people in my marketplace that don't know me yet? And
That's a great
I,
point. That's a
I
great
think
conversation point,
I think
Blake.
it's intractable. I'm not quite sure. I haven't figured it out.
How do you
But that's
differentiate yourself in a world that's indifferentiatable?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
because like there's 300 messages that our customers are getting from multiple sources, and how do you differentiate? How do you handle that? Yeah, that's a very good point. You know,
yeah. Well, it's also. I mean, one thing I've found that's similar in the IT services space with the copier space is during a sales process, you can say pretty much anything you want. It's sort of challenging to vet it And once the contract's signed, it doesn't matter anymore, right? You signed a
Right.
3-year contract with the wrong partner, and they will hold that to you no matter what, hold you to that. There's, like I've always said for a while, there's a couple of ways to do business. There is, make a genuine effort to provide the services that you have offered to somebody, and give them the best customer support you can, or put a lot of money into sales and marketing and attorneys and write the stickiest contracts, right? That's how you keep customers. You either
Right.
do a great service or you make your attorneys make the contracts really
Right.
sticky. I think that the attorney side has been winning, and that's not the way we've actually gone to market. So, but
Right.
like I said, everything swings, right? There's
Right.
like when you feel like everybody's doing it the other way, maybe you should be swimming upstream, maybe
Right.
that there's room for people to listen. It's just what I worry about is getting their attention so that you can actually like have a chance to convince them you're different.
Right.
Getting that one conversation is really hard.
Yeah. Getting that first
And
conversation
and
with
I,
you.
I don't give it to people either. So I can't,
Yeah, I
it's
I
one of those things,
realize
don't
I'm a
throw the first
terrible
stone.
I'm a
Yeah,
terrible prospect. I know I
yeah,
am.
yeah,
I know I
yeah.
am. I'm a terrible prospect.
And
I've
sometimes
become
it,
better since sitting on the other side of the desk. I have improved somewhat, but I know I'm a terrible
yeah.
prospect. You know. Yeah, very good. Well, we're kind of getting closer to the end here. I guess what I want to do is find out if anybody has any questions for Blake. It's been very interesting, Blake. Your story is amazing. So, but does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask Blake or find out about his business? Hearing none, or people are on mute, one or the other. Um, listen to music. Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
I have a baby I need to change here shortly, but I'm assuming I'm needing to spin a spinner.
Yeah, if we need to change a baby, let's get the wheel of fun and enjoyment and happiness and death. Notice I said death last. Let's get the wheel of happiness and joy in here. And so Blake, what we do each week is, or each time we do our program, is we spin for an Amazon gift card. So somebody who is observing gets to enjoy a $10 Amazon gift card. So we'll do that right now and get that taken care of. So go ahead, Piper.
Drum roll, please. Oh, look at
Raj,
that.
there he is. He left, but he came back just in time to get his card.
Yeah, awesome.
Very good.
Congratulations.
Very good. Well, Blake, I've really appreciated hearing the story today. There's some amazing stuff that, I've known you for a while, but I didn't know about the business itself, and very insightful answers. And I really appreciated the time that you spent with us today. So,
Yeah, thank you for the attention. And it's sort of nice to tell the story. I don't realize how, and maybe one of the lessons about talking to, other clients is they do like to tell their own story. It feels good, you know.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you lived it, right? I mean, it's something that you're soaking in every day, is the ongoing story of your organization. But honestly, to hear you talk to us and tell us about, the beginning, the origin story of HGI,
It's
is really
100 years,
interesting.
man. I
Yeah.
know I'm bald, but I didn't live it all.
Yeah, right. You're like the Gandalf of
Yeah, yeah,
no, but I think that's a differentiator, Blake. I mean, I think that's a very good, very interesting part of your business. So, um, no, I really did enjoy hearing about that, and the way that you guys are operating, and I believe with you that that personal aspect, that you know ability to shake someone's hand and look them in the eye, that's an important thing. So, keep it up, and I appreciate that that's the way that you choose to do business. So,
yeah. Well, thanks,
very good.
guys.
Very
Appreciate
good.
you guys having me on. Thanks again,
Yep.
Keith.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Take care, and everybody
Bye,
have
everybody.
everybody have a good rest of the week. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.